Everybody, welcome to UPAA Live today. We have Eric Bronson with us to share his knowledge about shooting basketball. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat, and we'll be taking time during the meeting to answer questions and sometime at the end. But I'm just going to go ahead and turn the time over to Eric and let him take us forward.
Hello, everybody. For those who don't know, I'm a member of Michigan Photography at the University of Michigan. I'm the assistant director. Roger Hard is our director, if you know him. We are the professional photography unit on campus. We cover all of campus, and we are also the athletic photographers. So we have a very large footprint, and University of Michigan is a very large school, so we get to cover a lot of stuff. But so today we're going to talk about basketball. I've been the main basketball shooter for about 8 years, maybe even longer than that. I guess I have to think about that. But we do everything. We do like the promo pictures, headshots, team shots. We, all the game stuff, game action. We manage the sidelines for seating for photographers. We handle all external photographers' requests for games. We handle things like approving remotes for photographers who come in. So we do a lot of game management as well for basketball, and it's a nice bit of, it really allows us to manage all of everything that happens during a game, and it can be a little hectic during big games, but it's really worked out over the years. So today I'm going to go through, I kind of split this up in 4 different parts. We're going to start with the lighting stuff and just kind of go through through the years of some of the things we've done, kind of tell you what a typical photo day is nowadays. Then we're going to go into a little thing on remotes, since basketball, you have so many places to stick a remote, and it's easier than most venues, right? We'll go over remotes, some action jubilation stuff, and then I'll go through a tournament run to show how I kind of cover the storytelling stuff. This Matt, we'll get to that question a little bit about if arena strobes are worth it. And the short answer is yes, but we'll get to that in a little bit. This was the first promo shoot that we did for basketball. Before that, they were hiring, a big name freelancer out of Florida, charging them way too much money. And myself and Austin Thomason from our office set this up during a media day without telling anybody, and just to show what we could do, and show that what we're capable of, and that completely changed the game for our office in terms of doing promos for every sport. And came out, it was pretty fun. You can see the wrinkles in the backdrop there that I think that we dropped or something.
No, Eric, don't undersell the importance of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to shoot it and show them, because they can't envision, they can't see. People only hire you for what they know you can do. So 100%. That's brilliant what you did.
100%. It was, you have to take risks if you're not getting what you think you're capable of. It was astounding how much that changed stuff. So years previous, we've been saying we can do this, but until we really show them with our, the top stars of the basketball program, everything else, then it changed everything. So, and over the years, we just had kind of different looks. I'm a big fan of overhead lighting, diffused overhead lighting. It can be a little more hectic to put together, and especially when people are jumping around, but you just have to be very safe about it. Sandbags, all that good stuff. There's just kind of different looks. Just kind of go through if anybody has any questions and stuff. This one, when I was going through the pictures for this was just kind of funny. This is Duncan Robinson. If anybody knows who he is, he's now a very big time player in the NBA. But when he came to Michigan, he was a transfer, and he came in late, and we had to this was during a men's gymnastics photo day, and he was just going to stop into the men's gymnastics thing and get a few shots, and we made him jump on the trampoline to get some pictures real quick. And it's just kind of funny, and just funny now that he's just he's just this huge star. So other looks, I'm a big fan of trying to get them on hardwood, whether it's at a practice facility, it could be a volleyball gym, whatever. I just love that look. We're doing sweeps now, and it's just not the same, but I'll get into like why we're doing that a little later on. Here's a little wider shot of an older setup that we had on hardwood, Paul buffs and umbrellas. And just other random shots and stuff, angles and whatnot. And this is if you have time, you know, like years ago, this is probably 5-6 years ago, we definitely had a little more time to be able to play around a little bit. Nowadays, like I said, it's a little bit more of a production line. Team shots. We don't do anything fancy for team shots. This is a team shot from, I don't know, it could be last year, it could be 20 years ago. Our basketball team shots, men or women, are always like this. Always shot with house strobes, the strobes that we use for the games, and you know, that's where the chairs always are. So, and that's, you know, I don't know if it's just because of ease or tradition. Michigan's a very traditional school of how we kind of do stuff, but that's how you have it. Some other looks. This is like the first real diffused overhead setup we had. I think this is kind of almost the same thing that we set up at the Grand Valley Symposium. So I love that top diffusion. And the reason we did that is separately because of Michigan football. Our helmet is that's like the most distinctive. We think it's the most distinctive helmet in college football. And if you're putting a white dot on it, it's not a very good way to market or advertise your helmet. So, but it translated really well to basketball. And that's what we're using now. So go back to this to try to explain what we're doing now. It's essentially this, except now it's a sweep of white paper. And we, like I said, we have that kind of semi-permanent photo studio in the basement of the athletic facility. And sometimes what I'll do, and this is a good example. So for this year, for promos, we were doing the black, usually the athletics picks if we're going to do a black background, white background. This year was a black background day. We did the regular promos, but then I had a separate camera with an 85 on it, and I turned off a few lights. I had the athletes, you know, step out off the mark essentially and bring them up somewhere else, and just to quick headshots just to have something different. And they actually use these a ton because it's different. And I think that's one thing, if you have the time, always have an idea in your back pocket of doing something a little more creative, a little differently. Because you don't want to be thinking on the spot if all of a sudden the SID or somebody's like, hey, we have a few more minutes, you want to try something else. Pre-plan.
Now, Eric, how many steps away from the other setup was this setup?
3 steps.
That's the key.
This was part of the setup, right? Yeah. So in my mind, I had like, well, if we just bring them up this way a little bit, turn off this light, we're going to get this type of lighting.
Awesome.
And 85 makes it look nice too, right? So, and again, it's kind of the same idea with this version for men's. Men's not as nice. So I love my black and whites. And then like personality, like these two, Isaiah Livers, Jordan Poole, like they had a ton of personality. I probably could have found a better picture to describe personality with them, but sometimes players just want to roll and just want to do a million things. Let them, if they're told you have 5 minutes per player, you're not do not be the person to stop that 5 minutes. Let the SID or whoever's in control do that. Like, the more the players can have fun, you might get some really interesting stuff out of it. And then one year I just kind of wanted to do like a little grungier, grainier street type thing. And I just had like this one light, our biggest parabolic umbrella from Buff, had it way far off, and just kind of did like, really just kind of edge lighting up against this like wall that's in the basement of our basketball facility. Another setup. This was, I don't know why this happened the way it did this year, but This isn't this year, but the year we did this, we had to set up in the concourse, and it really limited us. So it limited us in terms of like, I mean, obviously it's not going to look as cool with hardwood. Players are not going to want to jump us around as much, but they still will. But they feel much more comfortable in their element. And for basketball in particular, that means like, you know, on the basketball court. And sometimes location does kind of matter. And I kind of put this in here, just kind of show up I mean, a random setup, but also like this didn't work out the best this year. For this.
You just have to recruit smaller guys, so he doesn't have to go off the paper.
Yeah, well, so that's what I have here. And then just like, you know, you're not always going to be shooting with. Don't always think you're going to shoot with a 7200, like 24-70. Try to get wide. You know, just have some fun. I want to do this more actually, of just like trying to shoot wide and on close on players and just have a different perspective. But it's kind of hard when you're shooting for designers and there's a specific you know, ratio in mind. But I guess let's go over like a photo day, what we do nowadays. So nowadays everything is packed in terms of there are 4 stations that the athletes go to, and this goes for every sport except for football. So all other 26 of our varsity sports. There's a large basement and one of the performance centers, and we have our white background setup in there, which, you know, we have the overhead scrim that's diffused, you know, that, and it's double diffused. We also have kind of a key light, large umbrella that's diffused. Then we have a fill umbrella, and then we have obviously the lights lighting up the backdrop, and then we have one rim light. We also have a headshot station because we do blue background headshots that are just a basic headshot setup. And there's the video station where they're doing all their video board promos. And the 4th station is like the social media station where the SIDs use iPhones and they jump around and do stuff. Sometimes we have a black background set up there. We have space for that. And we didn't do it this year for some reason, but typically for basketball, we do like our standard white backgrounds, and then we do kind of our artistic like kind of darker background. You know, maybe you're shooting wide open. We use crystals, gels, all that stuff. And for some reason I couldn't find those pictures real quick, but
and you said on each station, on this station, on the main station, you're getting them for 5 minutes or so?
About 5 minutes. And sometimes for basketball, there's not a lot of players, right? So it can be more, you know, it all depends on like where we were scheduled in their day. Do they have to go to class? Do they have to go to practice? You know, sometimes we're doing this at 7 a.m. Sometimes we're doing it after practice at 9 o'clock at night. And you dread the times when you hear you're doing it after practice because they're exhausted, they don't want to do anything, and then it's up to, you know, then the athletes are done after about 3 minutes. You know, so if you have any control over the time, make sure you're doing it when they're fresh, right? Student athlete schedules have become much heavier over the last 5, 6, 7 years, and it's harder to find, you know, the ideal time, like what you would think the ideal time is for them to be fresh and ready to go. It's not up to you anymore. So
for those that are going to ask, what's your favorite lights? What's your favorite modifiers? Just give a shout out.
We use Paul Buff, or we used to use Paul Buff, got a lot of nice stuff out of that. And right now we're a relatively new pro photo system or office. And you know, the thing I love is having that giant, it's a giant scrim, 12 feet by 12 feet, or maybe even it's larger. I think it's 12 feet by 12 feet. That's overhead, you know. I love diffusing, double diffusing. I love the large deep parabolics that Paul Buff, or keep on saying Paul Buff, that Pro Photo has.
Which light are you using? The D2s or
the B10Xs?
10Xs, okay.
Mm-hmm. And I guess like and also the B10s.
Yeah,
most stuff we have like for that setup is the B10Xs. So
and then when you're not, what modifiers, softboxes do you have that when you're not using the scrim?
Like, what do you mean?
Is there a favorite, like, do you like octa boxes? Do you like soft boxes?
We haven't, we used a lot of a lot of the octa boxes off the buff, and I'm really liking this deep umbrella.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Good.
I really, really like it. And we have some of the smaller octa boxes, but like there's a lot of area to cover sometimes because these guys are jumping around and so like it's harder to, because this has become such a production line, it's harder to create a little more pinpoint, and with the octabox with grids, you really can't have them move that far off that mark, with that lighting. With the umbrellas, you have a little more leeway. So I think that's probably the reason I like using them.
Good.
Yeah. Do I have any examples of your set with the key lights? Not easily findable right now.
Well, you could share it on the Facebook later.
Yeah.
Because that's people always love seeing the setups.
I know. I was there yesterday. I should have thought of it. Okay. So that's basically it. I know for a lot of people that sounds like a lot, but we've been doing it for so many years. Sometimes it's hard to think about like all the nitty-gritty details, but little stuff of like, make sure you have a nameplate for each kid that's printed out. Make sure you have extra an extra camera. I mean, all this stuff, extra batteries, like just be prepared, make sure you have an extra head on you if something goes wrong, especially when these things become kind of production lines. You just want to make sure you have a backup, because there's not much time to like stop and rework stuff and everything. Everything's very scheduled now. Any other questions about lighting stuff?
No, looks like we're good. Let's move to the next section.
Let's go to all right, remotes. I really don't do backboard remotes anymore because we kept on getting yelled at by Big Ten refs, so it just turned into like almost like roulette, right? Like which Big Ten refs are we going to get? And for the longest time, our team was a shooting team, not really a driving to a basket team. So remotes in any sports, I mean, it's all chance, right? It's all chance, and you want to have the highest percentage possible. And for us, like backboards, not so much anymore. Now that we have a new coach, a new style, I'm going to revisit that. I'm going to think about that. But backboards, great perspectives. We shoot everything with strobes here. And back to the shortest question about are strobes still worth it? 100%, in my opinion, yes. Lighting is very good in these arenas, but then what sets you apart from anybody else, right? You can do, and I'll kind of show you as we go on here. You can do lots of different things with strobes in arena besides just lighting game action appropriately, right? If we want to be, we are a chargeback unit. So there's a little more emphasis on us being able to, we essentially have to pay our own way. So we need to be a little more competitive maybe than other units, but I think like strobes just really does create a different look. Now it's pricey, and obviously if you don't have the budget for it, you don't have the budget for it. But
what arena strobes are you using?
So right now we are using really old Speedotrons, like 2401s or whatever.
The good old standard. Yeah,
and hopefully there's gonna be a change this year. I'm not gonna say exactly what yet, but it's time to move on. We've had them repaired and cleaned a number of times, and I think one set we inherited from the Ann Arbor News, and it's probably 35 to 40 years old at this point, so it becomes a safety concern at this point. Not to mention it's just they've become unreliable. So but they've also been workhorses, but and they've done a lot. got a lot of great pictures of them out of the years. So I'm not really exactly sure what we're gonna go to next, but we are instead of just like shooting ambient, because we got brand new lights in our arena this year. So it's, the ambient's even brighter than it was before, but still we know that we want to have a different look. And for me personally, I want control over those lights to be able to, when the time has come, be able to have a little bit of kind of creative lighting on the court. So tournament time remotes. Here's an example, near the end of games, if you have a floor remote, and your team is, it's a close game, you don't know what's going to happen, turn that remote away from the basket and towards the bench. You will get pictures like this and like this, like this picture exemplifies March Madness. It even says it, and I'm shooting the action while my remote is shooting the jubilation, and it can't get any better.
Well, and emotion is what sports is all about, and that's what's so awesome about this. I mean, you just feel it.
Yeah, and basketball is, I mean, out of the gate, it's a little bit easier, right? Like, how do you shoot basketball? Well, follow the ball, but when you're following the ball, something else is happening somewhere else, and that's why remotes can be really key. Just a floor remote from tournament time, overhead at our place. We're not directly over the basket. We have like just 2 different angles we can get, but it's better than nothing. Just some different random takes I dug out. And then recently, after years and years of pestering, we got mouse holes. So
and they are, can you explain what those are? Some people may not know what they are. They're awesome.
So the padding, can you see my mouse?
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, so I'll just do the opposite of the here. All right, so like the padding right here, there's a little hole that can fit, I don't know how many inches would you say? 6 inches, 8 inches tall?
Yeah, like eight or so inches wide, and like 7 foot and a half deep, depending on what style backboard.
And you stick a camera under there. It's right on the hardwood. It takes some playing around. You can see that I don't have it, it's not angled perfectly because the backboard is a little askew right there, but that doesn't really matter. But it takes a little practice of where your foot, like your focus point. Sometimes you can go in from behind. It all depends on the style of backboard, like Jerem said. And if you catch wind that your school is getting new paths for your backboards, get in there and be like, hey, for an extra, like, let's just say $500, I can, Spalding will put a mouse hole in for you, or however much it is, and it's awesome.
That's exactly what happened to us. We got new Spalding backboards, and I'm like, hey, when you order them, can you order these things with them? And they totally did it. It was only like $600 more. And I'm telling you, it also, the way you sell it's like, this is a safe way to put a remote. They can't land on it. It's inside the padding. Right. So it's recessed.
You just make sure it's inside, right? Like your lens just needs to be, it can't be really poking out. It needs to be in. But yeah, it's pretty nice.
And then what are you tilting your camera up with?
Whatever I find in my pockets. There really is not. I use like a Z6 and there's not a lot of space. It's hard to, I don't put like a full body camera in there. It's like it's whatever the newer like system we have. There's, like I said, the Z6 or nothing. So, and I'll have a stack of whatever. Like maybe sometimes I'll tape batteries together and put it up. So
yeah, and it's just sitting on the floor. There's no other support needed. It's great setup.
And you can crop it and make it, crop in if you need to. More overheads. Here's how it looks with the fisheye. I kind of think that's too wide, but I was playing around. But it's a different look, and you can manipulate this and Photoshop too if you wanted to. So note about remotes, you're not manning those remotes. You don't have, you're not next to those things. The whole point. So make sure whatever you're doing is safe. Make sure you're safety cabled up in the rafters. Jay's presentation talked about this a little bit too, using magic arms, or, not magic arms, but that's what people call them. I've had one of those fail in the past. not at basketball, but just never over tighten those things either. They have brass nuts in them, and people get nervous and they over tighten them, and that causes those nuts to fail. But it's also why you have safety cables. I always at least have 2 safety cables on my setup. I should take a picture of it, but I use I screw into the lens mount and the body. So and then I have actually maybe it's actually 3 safety cables. I have like a little kind of a thin climbing cable I also put on the, what do you call it? What's the grippy part?
On the
magic arm, the grippy part like goes to that actually connects to
the super clamp.
Yeah, the super clamp. Thank you. So that's also a cable coming off that super clamp. So tournament time, depending on where you are, it all depends on if whoever's there shooting, maybe there's contract people who are putting remotes in places that you want to put remotes, but you can see my mouse, like sometimes you can put remotes up here. I like to put remotes down here. I usually have a remote on the side and I have a remote in front of me. At home games, I never put a remote in front of me. If I do shoot, if I am shooting low, I just put my camera on the ground and tilt up for some plays. I never put a remote in front of me anymore. It's just, you don't really need to. And now with like the Z9 with the flip screen, it's so much easier to see, and compose.
Yeah.
So, I just set it down, take a few shots, because how many remotes, are nice for flavor. It's nice for different perspective, but if you keep on putting the same picture in over and over of a remote, it's not gonna have the same type of emphasis. So
Which Pocket Wizard are you guys using?
The Multimax +2s. Those work fine. So
any tips for people that have interference issues, or sometimes it's not triggering?
Yeah, so one thing we do is we have Pocket Wizards that are connected to our power packs. We actually have them on arms out, so they had essentially it's kind of a clear point to point. So you can see the strobes up here, but we have arms that come out and they're extended, so they're not behind all the railing and all the other crap that's up on the catwalks.
Yeah.
That certainly helps. Pocket Wizard states you need to have the transmitter essentially up and down, which doesn't really need to be, but if you're having issues and if it is pointing an odd way, maybe that was a little thing that will help. So yeah, we don't really come into that many issues where we're at. So everything's pretty cut and dry, but we were having issues when we used to have the Pocket Wizards just kind of hanging right off the power packs, and once we put them out, that it was a very big difference. So if anything, just make sure they're not behind electrical stuff, they're in front of it. So
I've also noticed that you don't want them very close to any metal bars, and that just the if you can have everything a foot away from other metal bars, it just that the radio signals bounce around better. So
yep. During game, my school won't let anyone behind the net baseline. Really?
Yeah, Derek's got a question. Is during the game, my school won't let anyone behind the net or the baseline. Any tips for good angles, not under the net? Nets are suspended from the ceiling like a high school gym, so we can't even do mouse holes. I'd love Derek on Facebook, share a photo of that setup. I'd like to see, maybe we could give you some tips. But yeah, what are your favorite angles that are not baseline?
During the pandemic, when there was nobody here, I loved being on like the side right here, almost in line with the back. I know that doesn't help, but like even if you were further back, I really like that angle. And I wish, now that everything is like back to normal, you can't get that angle anymore. If you can go by the scores table, that's a nice angle. I mean, anything that's like kind of a right angle to the basket. So like I'm using my hand, no one can see my hand. So right angle to the basket. So if you're shooting from over here up in the stands directly this way, that's always really nice. These players will go up with one hand. dunks behind the, you can get a side profile of their face. And then if you have rafters, play around. That's such a great spot to shoot, and if I was just playing around and have fun, I would just stay up there all day and just play, so but I really do like that side angle. And if you're up in the stands, getting up about basket level is a nice spot to be. I'm not a huge fan of shooting like kind of behind at an angle. It's good for a little bit, but after a while you're going to find that the basket will be blocking way too much. Hope that answers your question. I'd like to see your setup too.
Yeah, Derek, share your setup so maybe we can help you on Facebook with that.
So, but yeah, with remotes, each arena is different. So you're going to have different spots to put a remote that I couldn't even think of because it doesn't exist in my arena. So explore your space and try stuff out, and just make sure you're doing it safely, because the minute something drops out of that ceiling, you'll never be able to put a remote up there again. Quite possibly lose your job. And that's why, if we have another photographer coming in wanting to remotes, I go up there and essentially approve it to see if they've done everything correctly, because we've had people go up there without safety cables and everything else, and you can't live like that.
Yep.
Any other questions about remotes? I am firing them separately. I'm not firing them off my camera, but I do have a pocket wizard that I use to fire. It's the same strobes, but and I used to use one of those trucker horns, and I wired it into the pocket wizard and I taped it to my 7200, but stop that.
Yeah, do you have a trigger button you use, or what do you?
I'm just pressing the test button now.
You're just pressing, okay.
I have my system and I'm comfortable with it, but that can be the way I do it is a little unwieldy. So I would look into, like I said, kind of like a truck horn you can buy for $3 at auto parts place to send that signal to your pocket wizard. That'd be kind of helpful. Some people use their feet, but it's kind of hard when you're sitting on the baseline.
Yeah, I have a foot pedal that I use, and I kind of put it under my leg, and I just push down on my leg to trigger.
And I know there's other better ways to do it, but
do what works, man.
Do what works for you. So any other question?
No, I think we're good. Let's head to the next section.
All right, so let's do. So these are non-remote pictures, so you'll see some stuff that's up all over the place, but this is a good demonstration of having strobes. This is a strobe picture. Turn off the two strobes that are closer to the players, and shot down in the rafters. Just random action stuff. I'll just cycle through here. Tournament time stuff. And one thing about, and I guess there's a whole tournament section, but double exposures are always fun. Basketball pictures can become repetitive because it's a pretty straightforward sport. So play around. Being in the middle of the action, understanding your team, what they do. This team loved to throw water everywhere. The jubilation is the best part, in my opinion. These are my favorite pictures. And positioning yourself to do that means everything. So
for those that don't have locker room access, any advice for them? I've had it both ways, where we've had coaches allow us in the locker room after a big win. Other ones, what would you say about that?
Just try crossing that line as much as you can and see where you get stopped, right? If you don't have locker room access, you don't have it, right? So you have less chances for jubilation. But the bench is a great place to keep your eye on. You always want to have half an eye on that bench. That's where great jubilation comes from. Positioning yourself for those bench pictures too. Sitting on the baseline might not be the best spot. They might be running to mid court, so you might want to near the end of the game move yourself to mid court so you get more of a head on perspective than running off the bench. if you can at least get into the hallway towards the locker room, there might be stuff going on in there. Right. So, you know, a lot of times like coaches are hugging players on the way into the locker room, and that's all you get. That's good. It's something a little different. It's not on the court.
And if the coach is sketchy, you could say, hey, how about I take pictures and I don't release anything unless you approve it? Maybe that gets you your foot in the door just to try, But yeah, it's hard. Some coaches just, like the locker room's a sacred place. But I feel like now with social media being everywhere and the video team needing all this stuff, like it's a lot easier to be in the locker room because they're pushing for the same thing with the video side.
Right. But at least for us, everything is more or less approved before it really goes out too.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm going to say, try, you that's where these moments come from, and try to become familiar with, the players. The players know me, they know what I'm doing there. They're comfortable with me there. And like, they will forget that I'm taking pictures, and then they get goofy and have fun. Finding different perspectives, it's back of their heads, but this is during the Final Four. The giant flag is moving overhead. This was a one-shot picture, but just understanding what's, for these bigger events, like understanding pre-planning, don't be reactive, like plan ahead. Just more fun action stuff. If people have questions about actions, I kind of like quiet moments too. I like to look for like my behind the scenes thing. It's part of the reason and a lot of those quiet moments happen when things are dark, right? Like lights are out or you're in a tunnel. I shoot with like my 35-1.4 a ton with basketball to help find those moments. I don't know if you can see the spit come out of that guy's mouth. But yeah, this is bench. Always look at the bench for basketball. That's where your jubilation is going to be. It happens on the court, but like, you saw like with the previous remotes, like there's so much juke that comes out of the bench. It's kind of more behind the scenes stuff. Quiet moments in the tunnel. Same thing with 35. And just a nice like emotional like senior day picture. Then finding different angles, and using the strobes to your advantage. This was with the 200 to 400. Just trying to, like luckily we have a lot of different spots up in our rafters that we can shoot from. Playing around with slow shutter and strobes. Jubilation, like, after shots. Some players are going to be more emotional than other players. Just know that, know your team, know who's going to be the ones who are going to be screaming and yelling, have the jube, and just keep in mind, like after they make a shot, keep an eye on them, right? So just more angles, more lights, using part of our jumbotron on the left here. Picture. And then using whatever, like, the entry light, this is not my strobes. This is just like the spotlight they use, but just thinking of it differently, like shooting up in the rafters. And I know a lot of schools don't have rafters, but it's not about the rafters. It's just about thinking about different angles all the time. So, and then, get some filters and have some fun. It's really nice with strobes and throwing a filter in front of your lens. You can get some really fun stuff, and especially during game action, so our SIDs really like this. It really plays well on social media. So it can be looked upon as gimmicky, which it can be, but at the same time, it's something a little bit different, and they love it on social. So same idea here. One really cool thing about basketball is you have this nice shiny hardwood. Shoot low, put your camera on the ground, use that reflection, use it for promos, use it in game. Pretty much every game, I'm like, whatever long lens I'm using, it's either going to be, I use a 200 or 400 as my long lens. Sometimes I'll use a 300. But I'll put that on the ground and try to shoot some game action on the other end with with reflection in the floor here. We have this nice dark strip right here that helps a lot, but with the reflection, and then just some nice jubilation stuff. And again, they started going towards me because they knew who I was, and that's kind of important.
Plus, you weren't made out of cardboard.
Huh?
Plus, you weren't made out of cardboard.
I know. You can't tell. There's a bunch of stuff in there, right?
Yeah, that was a weird season, man.
It was, but the shooting positions were pretty great because you had positions that you will never have again.
Yep.
So again, keeping your eye on the action, just because a shot is made doesn't mean your picture taking is over. A lot of jubilation happens right after a dunk or a shot. Just always be on it. Like, you see so many people once a shot is made, their camera moves down from their face and they're missing all the jubilation. So
I tell my students, you don't start celebrating until they stop celebrating.
I've been doing more stuff in the tunnel where I set up, this was like a CTO, speed light, and I just kind of sat it on whatever I could stick it on and just, start shooting players going by. And that's one thing you can try to do. No one really notices the speed light going off. So if you have like a little area, you can do this. I've seen people like magic clamp that, put a clamp on somewhere, like right at the entrance of a tunnel or wherever they can, and people don't notice it. And you can get some really kind of cool moments like this. He's like tapping his chest, like his pregame thing he does walking out, and and just playing around, because at some point there's a lot of basketball games, and so you're going to want to change your perspective a little bit each game. You're going to want to try something new, be creative. Sometimes it won't work out, but there's a lot of basketball games, especially between men and women. So here's me. This is just me putting the camera on the ground. This is where I sit for the first half. I sit closest in towards the basket, and then the second half, if you see my mouse, I sit kind of near the end, so I have a nice clean view of the bench on the second half. But I'm also getting up, once in a while to shoot, promotional activity that happens that we need to shoot, and then I might go up kind of like up here, kind of mid concourse, and shoot for a little while with my 200 to 400. And don't be afraid to shoot tight. You can see right up their nose, and and see the little stuff. But I've been shooting basketball way tighter recently. Like sometimes I don't put down my 200 to 400 when they're on offense, and you might miss something, but you might get a really nice clean close-up shot, because you don't really see those too much in basketball because it's a little harder. But it's not something to do all the time, but it's a nice detail kind of image to put in your gallery. Just keep your eye on the jubilation. And some schools have a lot of interesting intro stuff, so play, have fun. So in basketball, it's fun and easy to get, a lot of mistakes happen in basketball, and be prepared for that. Like a lot of loose balls, right? And that's, a lot of loose balls happen in transition, right? You might be like, oh, my arms are tired, I'm gonna put down, but be ready for this, especially for big games. Your game action. Good question from Matt. So let's see here. All right, so let's talk about game time. So I have it set up where I have Ethernet cords in the floor that come out of the floor where I sit on the baseline. So my cameras are plugged in via Ethernet, and I'm sending images through the Photo Shelter FTP to all of our athletic image editors who are dealing with like social media and whatnot. So they're getting, the minute a dunk happens, they have that picture 3 seconds later. I'm not sending everything, I'm sending just my selects. So that stuff goes on Twitter, it goes on Instagram, and once in a while it goes on Facebook. We also do a halftime gallery that I edit at halftime, and I do my final gallery and my final edit after the game. So if I'm really ambitious, I hook up our remotes to Ethernet, like up in the rafters, and that stuff all gets downloaded automatically. We don't like for basketball, we don't worry about anything with wireless because we're always plugged in. If I'm on the road, then yeah, I'll send to my phone and just to get some stuff up for social. So hopefully
when you're shooting with strobes, how many images are you capturing each game?
I'm editing about 200 to 300.
Mm-hmm. And how many do you actually shoot, like actually capture?
I don't know actually, because I'm tagging everything in game. I'm not, I don't really revisit anything unless I know I forgot something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I mean, just as a side note, like becoming a fast, competent tagger and shooting athletics helps you so much in the long run. It's one of those like random photography skills that I really think is important. And if you're not doing it, start doing it. And again, if you might miss something, but if it's something that's that important, you should know that you missed tagging it. But if it's like, oh, there's another clean picture of a player dribbling a ball down the court, well, how many pictures of those do you have? You have a lot of those. It doesn't matter if you mistagged, if you didn't tag some of these kind of more pedestrian clean pictures, right? Because you already have enough of them. So
you're essentially tagging in your camera, your keepers, and then when you ingest, you just work on the keepers.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so hopefully that answers the question. So and it's become it's a lovely system. And if you don't need to have Ethernet in your floor, just tape an Ethernet cord down, like from another location, or you can do this via wireless too. But I come to find that a lot of SIDs that you work with don't know that you have the capability of sending in game, and it's quite a game changer for them, for their workflow. When they find out that you can, and I think it takes a little pressure off of like doing a gallery mid game too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Any other questions about game stuff? Like,
so one of the questions that Rob had is what about how do you pre-plan for a game, or like say you're doing something different each game to keep it interesting? Do you have a process? What are you trying to approach the game to get certain things? Do you have like storylines you're trying to follow?
Sometimes we have storylines, whether it's a player approaching a certain amount of points, or if we're playing a really weak team and we get bench players in, that stuff is all thought about and talked about with our SID ahead of time. I'm thinking about like, okay, what remote am I going to do for this game? Sometimes I might put up 2 if it's a bigger game. So I come in with the right equipment. I'll be like, if I shot with the 35 last time, maybe I'll try the 50 this time and see what happens when I go in the tunnel. Like switching up lenses is a simple way to try to change stuff up. I always have those crystal things on me, and I try to use them here and there. But I think, whatever I did the last game, I don't want to try to replicate again. So
just keep mixing it up, right?
Yeah, just mix it up. Like
how early do you show up to a game to get your remotes and everything set?
3 hours, sometimes 4, sometimes 2 if I'm going to do like an easy remote, like on the post or something, which I don't really do that very often. But we have to tape down names. There's just a lot of management stuff that we do on top of it too. So tape down names, as in tape down all the spots for all the photographers going to be there. So,
and then Tim was asking about how many road games do you go on every season?
Nowadays, 0 to 1. We do all the tournament stuff. So Big Ten tournament, NCAA tournament. We used to do at least 3 road games, and now I don't know. Like we've had kind of a new development. I know this happening to a lot of athletic departments, but they have kind of student managers who are acting as photographers now, going on all going on everything. So while it's not professional photography,
Social focus.
it's content,
Yeah.
and it's free. So yeah. So but road games, I don't know. Unless it's like a big road game, like our big road game is easy for us. It's always Michigan State, which is 45 minutes away for us. So we always do that one. We used to go down to Ohio State all the time. But we're kind of lucky where our biggest rivalry is right down the road.
Yeah.
And that makes it a lot easier. I mean, that's not even an overnight trip for us. I mean, for the team it is, but not for us. So
Awesome.
But tournament time, I mean, that's when you get all the cool. And let's go into tournament time. What's the last one?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess these are in no particular order, but tournament time, there's so much more opportunity to tell a story. And I mean, this is New York City, that Madison Square Garden. It's them walking across the street, and just like having your camera on you all the time, trying to get into anything and everything that they're doing. When I shoot tournaments, I don't really stop. And it pays off. It's tiring, but you really get a lot of nice moments and some interesting stuff.
Yeah, you never put the camera away. You're always working. People are like, oh, you got to go on vacation. I'm like, that was no vacation.
Yeah,
that was working all day long.
Right. Oh, you got to shoot a tournament in Florida. You're so lucky. It's like, I didn't see a beach. And just like finding quiet moments like this. This was after NCAA win, and this is our former coach Beeline and his wife, and they're FaceTiming their son who just won a Division II title. And it was, a quiet little moment that I was able to sneak in, and I only got 5 seconds, but I got a nice little moment. Again, do not be afraid to get wet. Get right up in there. Just moments like on the plane, always have your camera on you. One of my biggest regrets is that what year was it? 2015, when the Michigan basketball team had the plane crash. Our plane went off the runway, and I didn't have my camera like and it was above me, packed away in my camera kit. And I just had an iPhone which battery died when I was snapping away and barely got anything. And ever since then, like my camera's always on me. I mean,
so that camera that you're walking around with all day long, just capturing these time moments, mostly just a 16 to 35, something like that.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just my 35.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And it's like it's one of the like smaller Z's, just a light, nice thing. I love that 35. I really do. I might use a little too much.
No, it's a great length.
But getting into film sessions, I can sneak in here and do some stuff. Just ask some players if I can go hang out in their rooms, because this is the inside life. Like what do they do when they're not in film and all stuff? They're doing homework. They're actually being students. Just trying to find these moments where they're being themselves. This is out to dinner at a steakhouse. I forget what town we're in. Why show up here? Well, it's for moments like this. Them watching a game live in the tournament. I think there was an upset that just had happened last second. Just playing around. Again, like, things can get repetitive. You've seen these pictures. And if you're team photographer and a huge moment happens and you're not really supposed to go on the court and work it out later. Don't be a jerk, but like, there's usually so much chaos and commotion that no one's going to notice, right? And you're there to get the shot. So, and this was the Jordan Poole game, the last second 3-pointer. And this was a game where being the team photographer was beneficial because everybody was aimed at Texas Tech. That's who we beat. All these photographers, SI, Getty, everybody was aimed at the Texas Tech bench at the end of the game. I was still on the play. And it's the only person who got the picture of our guy making the 3-pointer. Little bit of a benefit of being team in a way. Then in the locker room, a lot of emotion. Then finding quiet moments again, doing homework kind of on the way back.
Yeah, when you're on these trips, you're really just a documentary photographer, and there just happens to be a lot of basketballs around, right? You're just trying to tell their story and show it authentically.
Yeah. And you really go as many places as you can with them, A lot of times, like, I don't know, some people might want to ask permission first to go in the middle of the team huddle like this and shoot. And sometimes the older I get, the more I don't ask,
And nobody ever says anything, do they?
They don't. And it's very much worth it, Then you get fun stuff like this. You get starting to get, they get to know you, and you get fun stuff like this.
So Tim did ask the question, how have you ever overstepped and had a coach or someone tell you to back off or get out of the room?
No, I don't think so. Like if I sometimes when there are like a coaches meeting, a little more sensitive thing, like I'll just get a look, from a guy after I've had my minute, my 2 minutes, and that's it. In a situation like that, I'm not going to stay any longer because one, I just need to go in there for a shot, and two, there's no reason to get in a fight over it, so
when you have a relationship, I think you just pick up on the cues, right?
I did have a problem in Chicago once with a event with a security person, but I'm not going to get into that. But sometimes like your all access pass doesn't mean squat to somebody who doesn't know what it is. And it when you're traveling, that can put you into an awkward situation. So yeah, no, I'm trying to think. I don't think I have, other than the incident in Chicago. But yeah.
Well, and you just have to be wise. Like, I know I would never go in a locker room after a loss unless it was like the tournament, and there's just certain situations.
So I've been to 2 finals for basketball, and one final we were on the locker room, and we could all take pictures and everything. And then one of the players, the team's all sitting down, and one of the players just starts letting loose. He just, not anger, it's all sadness. And the coach was like, all right, camera's off, easy enough. It wasn't anything, you're not gonna get much for your use there anyway.
Yeah.
So, I don't, I don't really shoot like the kind of the negative, the sadness stuff, because for our purposes, they're not really going to use it unless it's a really good shot that's happening in front of me. But I'm not going to make any extra effort to like get in somebody's face, with that stuff. Does no benefit in my opinion. Like for why we were there. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, the best thing you can do is develop a relationship, understand what the boundaries are, overstep a little bit when you need to, but most of the time, like Jeremy was saying, like no one's really going to notice when you know, the better relationship you have with the players and the coaches and the familiarity. I mean, that means that means a lot, right? And they're not going to notice if you are actually overstepping a lot of the time. You know, they might make rules, but if you're really comfortable and have familiarity with them, they're not going to remember they maybe set these specific ground rules like 6 months ago, you know? So
Also, I would say that the cameras, now that you can shoot silent shutter, that's been a game changer because nobody even notices I'm there now. I'm invisible.
yeah. Yeah. Which most of these are before that, before our office had that. So yeah, tournament time is exhausting, but when you go back and look through everything, it's awesome. It's one of the it's why basketball is the favorite short sport for me to shoot. You know, it's that much easier. You can build relationships with people easier than, like, let's say football. You know, our basketball team has been very good over the last 10 years. So there's been a lot of opportunities to go on to postseason stuff. It took a lot of years. It took many years to get the point I was, you know, with this new coaching staff, it's not really there as much anymore. So, you know, kind of have to start from square one again. So new-ish coaching staff is really not that new anymore. So, yeah, I don't know. Basketball is, I don't know. It's fun for me because I, you know, you have a lot more games, so you have a lot more opportunity to try new things, do things differently. You're allowed to have a bad game and bounce back. With football, not so much. You got to have a good game every one of those games, you know, because there's not many of them. So yeah, I don't know. Questions, comments?
Well, we're almost out of time, but just one last question. You know, any advice to people that are new to shooting basketball? What should they do to improve their photography in basketball? I know that's a big loaded question, but you've dealt with a lot of students. You've seen people, you know, get into it. What's the best thing to get going?
Keep your eye on the ball. Thanks, everybody.
Perfect.
No, I mean, for real though, keep your eye on the ball, right? Start there. I mean, it's like most sports. Keep your eye on the ball. You know, getting to know what players do what. Is this a 3-point shooter? Is this a defensive player? Like, which bench players are going to be the bench players who are going to give me the most jubilation? You know, like, work with your SID or whoever, like, work with your access, you know, like, where can I go? You know, I think that actually these pictures here were part of a UPAA blog at some point, and maybe use this as an example to an SID or coach of like here's a tournament run from Michigan basketball, and this is the access they had and all this cool stuff they were able to do. You know, so
yeah, I'd like to shoot a photo essay with the team. Here's an example of something I'd like to do with you guys when you guys like to have these images, when
exactly.
Your social people like to have them, your SIDs. Absolutely.
So
great.
You know, you use that maybe Matt could probably probably find it easily, maybe post in the Facebook feed, but you know, use that please use that as an example. You know, start playing around with remotes if you can, right? Like, don't wait on that, because there is a learning curve, both on the tech side and just with being comfortable. Like, I have photographer friends who will not put a camera up in the rafters. They're just too scared and nervous to do it. You know, and that's fine, but you know, maybe you are at first, but you know, keep on, you know, build up the nerves, you know, keep on trying, because it's a really good perspective that not many other people are going to get. So really try to work on remotes, and then, you know, basketball, I find it's a little bit easier to find behind the scenes pictures, quiet moments, personality moments, like especially like right off the court. Hang around, you know, like just wait to see if something happens. So, and then if you have the opportunity, try strobes, use strobes. You know, I really, are they as necessary as they were 40 years ago? No, in terms of like getting a picture, but they really set you apart, and they do offer you a lot, many more creative opportunities for a season. So
Awesome.
cool.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for sharing all this with us today. I think that there was a lot of great advice, and the images are amazing, and I think they're very inspirational for those of us that shoot basketball or want to shoot basketball. I think that we all can take from what you've shared with us today. So anyway, we grateful for everybody that joined us today. We'll see you guys next month on UPAA Live.